My first question to you was going to be that, uh, you know, there's a way that you've, except for that one sequence outside where you see that march, you're taking this moment in history, which is extremely violent on both sides. People have experienced it, but you're actually doing it through very intimate spaces, which is the home and the everyday. So you hear about this through the everyday, whether it's the women cooking or playing cards, X, Y, Z. So can you speak to me about how you came to this? How did you decide to make this film like this?
So basically, it was something that I was looking at their experiences, and it is that what directed the sort of structure and form, or even how I decided to do it, because that is the space they occupy, and that is literally their space जहाँ पे उनका control और पूरा मतलब वो उनका area है. So in that sense, it, and when I was looking at, and they've all been friends, like a group of friends who play cards, they've been friends in like 30 years, they do this every afternoon. And then when I sort of was also looking at their friendship, this was a common thread, that they were all born in Pakistan, or like maybe were really young, or maybe one or two who were born here, but their parents had experienced the partition. So that was a shared history, but they never spoke about it. Actually, I don't think they've spoken about this before. Before that, these questions were posed to them while I was shooting it. Even Dadi, for that matter. A lot of that she says is not something that has come up in conversation previously. So, yeah, I wanted to look at their experiences and how they remember partition, and that's where they were situated. So that's what the location was. And most of them are like 70, 80, they hardly go out. They spend most of their times at home, and families are so busy, no one has time to even, like, I tried to also ask if some would, Mr. Charandas came to a recent screening in Amritsar, but no one else has been to a public screening because kisi, aches and this and that. So that's their space. That's in any case where the story was. So that's, I mean, there was no question about where.
I mean, which is rare, because I feel like, were you tempted to actually also take it outside that space and their experience, get other people to speak? I'm curious, as you were researching or filming, were you tempted to go out of the space ever?
So initially, one of the things that provoked me to think about it was I wanted to do a kind of portrait of this neighborhood, West Delhi, or Kirtinagar, which is a small part. And so in that sense, looking at the neighborhood, I was thinking about maybe filming some public spaces, but then I decided not to do that. Whatever of the outside you see is through inside the home. So I thought that maybe that was one way that I go outside, but then I never did. So yeah, and also something of like, having an image of like old women also as part of the, just an image of them on screen or as part of a narrative was also something that I was trying to sort of have as part of the work as I was imagining it. And also, Punjabi characters. I mean, all these thoughts were in my head. I don't know to what extent they actually come through, but that's what was working.
Right. Yeah. My question, and next question was to you was going to be about this idea of memory itself, right? And that's something I'm personally also interested in. What is lovely about films like this, that memory can go where large narratives, when you write about history, never do. But memory is also an unstable thing. So could you, and that's actually in one sequence in the film when the couple are speaking, where he speaks, he has a certain memory of what was given in the nation state, and she has a certain memory of it, and they articulate it so differently, which itself tells you so much. So could you speak a little bit about working with this idea of memory and getting people to either remember or reluctance to speak? Because sometimes you don't want to actually revisit it. Some of the things that you want to share about that?
So that was essentially what I think dictated the structure of the film, and that's also what we were trying to craft it around. And that's also why the voice is there. I mean, my voice is there in the sense of, and I was also like quite, like I asked her, us waqt cinema hall the, and she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, Achha, this is not the right question. Whatever, matlab, so I was speaking from where I am. and also trying to look at the partition which happened at that time and their memory of it, and somewhere my informed memory of what it has been or what I think they could have experienced from whatever I had read and all. So in that sense, yeah, this reluctance to remember, like Dadi doesn't, and then I'm also pushing it, which is also part of, us wanting to make a film and wanting it to go somewhere, to sort of hook on to something that is, that narrative, that story you think, that kind of thing that you're looking for while you're trying to sort of tell a story. And wo bhi nahi ho raha hai. So in that sense, the film is structured around that idea, and I think if that sort of communicates, then...
And you can see that tension in that moment, right? Because you're also her granddaughter, which is why you're able to push her. Perhaps if it weren't her, may not be. But you can see that tension in that moment, right? Where she's like, I don't remember. Maybe she doesn't remember, maybe she chooses not to. But yeah, I remember that moment. The next thing I want to come to you is the film is using different things, right? There's animation, there's the women speaking, and the everyday life. And you're also using documents, actually, archival material. And it informs the film in a certain way. Could you speak a little bit about that? Especially I'm curious about the animation parts that come in the film and the use of the archival material itself. Is this something that you had as a strategy when you knew you were filming, or is that something that came when you started editing? Could you speak about that?
So both the things were actually, they came as we went along, because it was a...
When you were shooting?
No, editing, yeah. Editing. Because, we were really sort of, both Anupama and me, like really struggling with the structure, and there's a debris of structures in the hard drive. Like, there were several sort of cuts and like films that could have been, but this is what it is. So the animation, I also in my films otherwise use a lot of like, but I was also looking at objects, because that's also one theme that runs in the sense ki, you remember some things, but what remains is like one pair of scissors or one sewing machine or something out of that whole event or the memory of it. So that was one thing that was also guiding how I wanted to tell certain parts of the story. Also the cross stitch is something that, like she's knitting, and those are embroideries that she has done. So it's a device to also layer it and texture it in terms of, adding to the feeling in the film. So that was with the stop motion. And the archival stuff is all Mr. Bangya's personal archive, and I sort of encountered him through one of Dadi's friends, and I didn't know about him. So as I was speaking to Mrs. Sunita, who's in blue and she's sitting on the bed, she says, oh, my brother-in-law is 90 and I'll just call him and he remembers something. And then we went and met him, and he just pulls out these documents which his family also didn't know that he had been keeping. So there is a college library card from Government College Lialpur and all that. And actually, I also didn't know about this compensation or the Department of Resettlement, Rehabilitation, Custodian of Evacuee Property, how it actually happened. And he's living in the house that they occupied at the time. And very recently only got it transferred to their name. So it added a whole other narrative. I was looking at the idea of home, but then bringing in property also sort of complicated it in the framework that I was trying to imagine it. And that kind of, I hope, comes through in the discussion where he says, I'm trying to make a political point, but she's also doing that. So that was the sort of...
And it's interesting how, I don't want to make it about men and women, how people express themselves, right? But anyway, let's open it out. I have a few more questions, but I'm sure there's a question there.
Hi. So I also come from West Delhi. In fact, my nanu lives in Janakpuri. Okay. So the film deeply resonated with me. I wanted to know, so from him and a lot of his friends, I always hear really sad and somewhat brutal stories about the partition. Did you come across stories of compassion, about people being nice to each other at times of such crisis? And if so, did you decide to not put them in the story, or did you not come across those at all? Because I think there's that book called Remnants of Separation by Anshul Malhotra. So, just curious always about this, that why aren't those stories also told when it comes to partition, where people just try to be human towards each other? Where? But there also it was more like we didn't eat their food, they didn't, and once they.
That's perhaps, it's okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there are stories that in literature and even otherwise in other books, there is documentation of all kinds of stories. In fact, it's the violence that we chose to leave out, because that is something that most of us know about, and so that there was that, but we didn't want to put that. But in the beginning, the first card game, she does talk about that our neighbor, उसने हमको बुरखा पहनाया और फिर वहाँ से निकलवाया. So does the other lady say that her father was there and then he grew a beard and then some of his neighbors helped him get out. I think there are many stories, and actually I don't know if, I mean, people can say when Puaji says that Gandhi ko यहाँ मारा था, there was a point that we were also trying to make in the sense of after the partition, that's something that happened here. And there's a story that I recently came across was also about somebody who came here and went and decided to go to Pakistan, but he was here, to get his things, and he was killed at the border. So, I mean, I think there are all kinds of stories. I don't think that those stories of compassion are not there. In fact, stories of also, let's say, pre-partition Punjab and Bengal and all of that is there. Yeah.
There's a question there. And humor. I mean, your film it was actually quite lovely to see the humor that in this quiet and not so quiet way.
Yeah, hi, Priyanka. Hi. Thanks for giving younger actresses for showing us. It's a nice, really acting of us. So, what do you feel? Which portion was very difficult to take the portion with Dadi?
The shooting of it, you mean?
Yeah. So, which portion you thought was very difficult to convey to the Dadi, and how to make it out of back?
It wasn't difficult in the sense, I mean, like she's my grandmother. It was, but because she was unwell, and I think the part where I'm really pushing her to remember something which either she doesn't want to say. So that was sort of, I mean, on my part to wonder, like, am I crossing a line that I shouldn't cross? But yeah.
And the other part is like you just compared the regarding Pakistan and India, right? The old letters and all. So which initiative made you to make that initiative to compare with Dadi?
I didn't understand, sorry.
The Pakistan and India was saying that the letters which you showing it is in the screen.
The documents.
The documents. So which made you to put into the movie actually?
Why did I put it?
Yeah.
Because they sort of talk about... in the letters in the beginning?
Yeah, the letters.
That was to locate it in Kirtinagar. So you see the certificate of Tauba saying, and then partition happens, which is the sound you hear, and then you see Kirtinagar. So that means she's arrived there.
Thank you.
I mean, just to break it down.
Are there any questions this side? We can come back.
I have a question, Subasri.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you, Priyanka. It's a wonderful film. One question I had was, most of the archival material that you have used is personal, like you said, right? But at the end, we suddenly see this video that you used from the public archive, assuming it's from the public archive. So I just wanted to ask how that choice fit into the structure of your film.
I mean, that is really the time you see these houses which are destroyed.
Okay.
And that's what, like, the theme is in the film. And that actually is a video of this Chiata bombing that she mentions in the film. I mean, that doesn't have... And then you see this woman, which could be sort of symbolic of so many grandmothers.
Okay,
I mean,
great.
Any other questions? There's a question. Someone here?
the other one.
No, this is all. So in terms of the structure of the film, it feels like the entire narrative, besides the very few points where it talks about the partition, is just it's revolving around so many mise-en-scènes. So you see the car, you see the game, then you see them walking, you see them angry, and I just want you to elaborate a little bit more on that. That why, or is it also because this is a mode of filmmaking that the mise-en-scène becomes so important then?
So in trying to figure out how I wanted to, I mean, I didn't want to sit them down and ask them. Also, I knew that the moment I asked them these questions, I don't know how they were going to respond. They were a bit reluctant in the beginning. So how that went, how that would go, I didn't know. So I wanted to sort of introduce this while they were playing cards. So it's kind of public, but it's also private in the sense. And actually, they were quite irritated with me sort of bringing it up. But then, because it's like a really serious moment, you know, they play really quietly, focusing and all that. And then so I wanted to do that. So that is the setup in the sense that I wanted to introduce it there while they are playing cards. And then I realized one person says, the other one is saying, just let it go. This is not something to think about. And then someone else responds. And so that was definitely set up, let's say. And similarly, actually, throughout the film. Because how I wanted to shoot the film was important. And this is some of the ways that I tried to do that. So while she's knitting or a certain point in the day, and or revisiting some of those conversations, like this thing of ki kaise like the second time I ask her and she's just like, hum train mein aaye, and then you know, like, but what else do you remember? So that happened over several conversations. So and I also wanted to, I mean, I was trying, I don't know if it works, create this, because I felt that the connections I was trying to draw were also not a very like straightforward argument. Like I couldn't argue it in the sense of, you know, lead it from one point to the other, you know, based on either what they would say or something that happens. So I wanted to also try and create a density in the sense of, by using either mise-en-scène or like now layer it in that sense. It works or it doesn't, you know, so the humor or shadi or like, and it kind of happened also like that. I mean, I don't know how else to say. Like you know, she's asking me about marriage, and then or the stuff in my house if I'm not married, and then she's talking about what they got. So it's all kind of, yeah. In the sense that they chose to game. Yeah, I mean, they also, I think like they also, so age also in that sense was something that I encountered in that way, because I thought I'll just ask these questions, they're just going to, you know, talk about it. But then also growing old and then kind of being at that point where you're just like, you know, and that's why we included that conversation between, I mean, you know, their sister-in-laws, and talking about this not remembering and just throw it out of your mind and all of that. So I think we didn't reach that kind of point of reflecting on, but then I think going by the film, if I see it now and she says that I've led a very good life, should just, starting from there actually. The house she's talking about is not here. So, I can't say.
The question there, yeah.
So there's this one particular scene where you are sort of filming two of the friends having a conversation from behind a window, as if you are sort of encroaching on their privacy. And also I wanted to ask you, like, did you have any conflict about, you know, triggering their memories, you know, them feeling sad about recollecting the past? So did you face any sort of moral dilemma about, you know, in one hand you want to create art to showcase, you know, what happened in the past, but on the other hand, are you like sort of, you know, making the people who went through all of that, you are making them live through those moments again and make them sad? So was there sort of a moral dilemma that you were facing?
See, I think the film is also structured to address that, in the sense that, you know, the reluctance to talk about it is also a part of, like, I think many people's families who've been through, you know, similar partitions, actually, not just this. And in the sense of, and that is why also, like, one moment you're talking about this and the next moment you're like, yab next chal kya hai or whatever, is kind of also wanting to put forward an experience of having gone through something, but also being in the present and sort of giving it a place which is in the past. So, and I'm sure it would have been, like with different partition stories, it would be different. So in this case, we didn't reach that space where I'm sort of, feeling a certain way about pushing them in a direction they don't want to go. I think they were also pushing me in a certain direction, and that's part of the film. And I mean, that negotiation, let's say, is part of the film. So I hope that kind of comes through.
Just to extend this thing, actually, there's an interesting moment when the film hits back at you, when you are being questioned about marriage, and so it's interesting because I feel that they're being as reticent or as open as you are being reticent and open about your life, and that to me is actually the key moment of your film, because both of you are on a certain tension of how much are you going to reveal of, or remember, or care to remember, or be pushed to remember. To me, really, that is where the entire film hinges.
I mean, yeah, so while I was doing it and while we were cutting it also, this thing was interesting to me, that I think I'm having a conversation with them, but then I am not where they are and they are not where I am. So it'll have to be across this, whatever. Anyway.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that from the memory perspective, I also, the moment which was very interesting is when she talks about Indira Gandhi's killing. You don't get tempted to correct or argue or get into that space at all. So you let her say what she feels is how it happened. So I think that's also a very key moment from memory perspective of the film.
But I do ask her, ki, what were they doing? I mean, I didn't want to dwell on the parlor thing because,
Correct.
That's just something that, she defines it like that. So that wasn't like something ki main wahan pe intervene karke bolun nahi ye ho raha tha. But I do ask her like what, because I mean, I wanted to bring this up, 84, actually I haven't, that march you see is a commemoration of the 84 in Amritsar.
Yeah.
So I haven't titled it, but that's what it is. And because for so many people in Delhi, and even otherwise one hears of it as a second partition. So I wanted to bring that in as like, as that. And and she was very much here and much older at the time, and one of our shops was in Chandni Chowk. So I was trying to sort of also ask her about it, and she didn't want to speak about it. So that's, yeah.
Cool. I'm sorry to do this, but we'll have to wrap up. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
We
Yeah,
look
thanks
forward
for
to your
coming
next
and.
episode.